browsing Twitter when a tweet caught my eye. It was gameplay from a pixel art game, pixel art being a style of gameplay that I've loved ever since playing Suikoden back in the 90s. Imagine my surprise when clicking a tweet, doing a little digging, and learning the game was going to be a fully fledged MMORPG. I reached out to the devs, who seem to be pretty genuine people, and have communicated with them back and forth on numerous occasions, with them even offering me access to test the game out in the future. But before it releases, before I test this game out, I want to take a moment to discuss it, whether we should even be excited for it, and what we should expect. Before we talk about Dracontos, so did you know that we have over 50 confirmed MMORPGs releasing over the next few years? And we took the time to manually document every single one of those in a dedicated video that you should check out regardless of your final opinion of Dracontos. Now, according to the Steam page, Dracontos is a free-to-play MMORPG with a nostalgic pixel art style combined with exciting, fast-paced action combat and more than 20 unique playable heroes. They do note heroes here specifically, but in this instance, heroes function more or less like classes. Every hero fits a distinct class archetype and make up part of the Holy Trinity: tank, support, DPS. Each hero has their own unique weapon, their own fighting style, their own game mechanics, personal traits, and story role. They chose to go this route in an effort to break away from traditional class systems found in MMOs. I'm well aware many of you aren't necessarily fans of having heroes as opposed to classes, because this imposes severe limitations in terms of character customization. However, I think here, at least in terms of pixel art, it might work. They do address concerns of player expression over on their Steam page, going on to confirm that there are going to be unique styles for characters to collect. Dracontos isn't just a place for combat, it's also a stage to express your unique style. Unlock exclusive icons, titles, and cool skins to further personalize your profile and heroes. Collect dozens of charming pets, and make your interactions more lively with over 30 emotes per hero, each featuring unique voice lines. Dracontos might be an MMO, but at the same time, it's a gripping, narrative-driven RPG as well. Players will occupy the world of Darad, which is brought to life by an extensive cast of characters and voice-acted cutscenes. They promise there will be a seamless blend of gameplay and storytelling as you progress through the game. Before we delve any deeper into Dracontos, allow me to take a moment here to thank our incredible patrons over on Patreon, allow for me to continue to do dedicated videos like this on MMOs every week. I appreciate it. Now back to the video. The story is a very important aspect of—
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that there are games that are trying to go old school and stuff, which is pretty awesome. Give you the nostalgia that, a lot of us are missing out on.
Of an MMO, to me specifically, helps me become enthralled in what I'm playing, in what I'm watching, and in what I am engaging with. But what is of equal importance is the PvE and the PvP. Dracontos is built around both solo and multiplayer play, allowing you to group up with other players or go solo into dynamic dungeons. You'll level up your hero, monsters and bosses will drop rare items, including equipment that will help you grow stronger and tackle more difficult encounters. As the dungeons are dynamic, they will provide players with ever-changing experiences, with varying monsters, bosses, resources, traps, and objectives to overcome with, as they point out, the potential for special events and twists. This is their way of lessening the monotony of PvE content while also providing more unique and challenging encounters. I noted PvP was important just a moment ago. A lot of players absolutely loathe open world forced PvP, and the devs behind Dracontos know this. Dracontos is going to provide players the option of dominating other players in a variety of different PvP modes with a fully functional ranked system and regular in-game tournaments. Whether that's sustainable remains to be seen, but it is still nevertheless a very good concept. Unlike most MMOs, Dracontos is going to balance PvP by making all characters' stats equal across the board, meaning gear, items, absolutely nothing will have an effect on your stats, making the playing field completely even and entirely skill dependent. If you lose, it's not because they had better gear than you, it's because, and you're not gonna like to hear this, but it's because you suck. You got skill diffed. This also eliminates many forms of pay to win from the game, since you won't be paying to actually win anything.
This game
The
looks
Dracontos
like
devs
my
have
type of
promised that
game.
There will be a lot more to the game than just dungeons, raids, and PvP. Though.
Was good,
Players will have a
Wavy.
deeper and more complex hero growth system to navigate, being presented
How
with
you doing,
numerous
brother?
customization options that allow you to progress your hero in different ways by modifying their abilities with orbs and artifacts.
Really nice
there
game.
will no doubt still be cookie cutter meta builds, but this provides a little more in terms of freedom over how we play. There was confirmation.
Like, I like the art style. You know what I mean? I'm good. What about you? I'm good. Oh, there's an ad gonna start in like 3 seconds. But when did it come out? Wait, is the ad playing now? Um, I think this is coming out soon. Either early. I'm not like, cause he just posted this video like an hour ago, so I think he's gonna tell us soon. I don't have an ad. Oh, perfect.
That player housing will be implemented.
I think this is gonna come out soon, either this year, by the end of this year, or early next year.
Plot form is unconfirmed. They note you'll be able to obtain your own land and decorate the plot however you wish. Whether this plot of land is out and in the open world for other players to see and interact with, or is merely instanced, is currently unknown.
Like the art style here.
Player
Like, it's pretty nice. You know what I mean? Like, it's not bad off. You know. Looks like there's some cool monsters that you can kill here.
market, allowing players to buy and sell items. This is required in any MMO, as without it there's no real sense of an economy. Guilds will be present, and given they express the various PvP game modes, Guild Wars very well might be a thing. They note that you can ascend to become the most powerful guild on the continent, which can really only be done on the bones of your enemies after all. There will be regular global events, such as mini-games that occur
Oh, this is cool. That's a cool boss right there. You know, like I said, you know, you can make this work. You know, you can get a lot of people attracted to this game, even people that are young, just because the art style is really nice. It's well done. It seems like there's going to be a lot of things going on in the game. It's going to be like a full-fledged MMO. It's like we never had that back in the day because it was always like single player, you know, like single player RPG, whatever. But now that there's MMOs, they can actually do it.
Hours, which according to the devs will
like,
change the pace of the game.
And you saw how there's you got teammates and stuff, so most likely you're gonna be in a raid of like, looks like there's 6 people here, and you're gonna be trying to coordinate, you know, DPS, tank, you know, range. He got the book there, so he's probably a mage. He shouldn't have died. He's DPS. You know, it looks like he's another DPS melee. Get the Warhammer there. Another axe here. It could be a berserker or something. There's another class here that we don't really know what that is.
Devs will change the pace of the game. I think that's honestly a little bit of an over-exaggeration here, but you know what? Who am I to judge? They also have a functional crafting system, but didn't really elaborate on how many professions there will be, which profession.
That's cool. Crafting system. I mean, hey, they're going all out. You know what I mean? They're going all out. And look, there's like
specifically will be present.
Cool
whether
bird
you'll farm materials out in the world to craft, or whether dungeons will be the primary source of resources. Dracontos, from what I've seen in terms of gameplay, what I've read online, is really shaping up to be quite the fascinating MMORPG. According to the press section of their website, there'll be 21 playable heroes, different to the 20 listed on Steam. You guys might want to update that. It'll feature a top-down isometric perspective.
So what have you been playing, Wavy?
Combat,
What have you been
with inspiration
doing lately?
for the game and characters coming from legends like Chrono Trigger, Stardew Valley, Graveyard Keeper, and Stone Shard. They're attempting to build a world on the scale of the Lord of the Rings, which I'm going to be honest with you guys here. The Rings.
We got 21 different heroes, online world, dungeons, intense PvP fighting, you know, over 100 different enemies with different mechanics, guild system, collectibles, exclusive icons, titles, cool skins, collect dozens of charming pets, over 30 emotes per hero, and have your own unique voice lines. Nothing much, playing some old games on the PS5, like Dying Light and Minecraft Dungeons, a little bit of Dead Island. Oh, nice, nice. Hey, you know, not too bad. Not too bad, hey. Yeah, I'm kind of like, I don't know, like I'm looking for a new game to kind of like bite my teeth into, get addicted all over again, like how I used to. Like a lot of the MMOs that are out now are pretty, they've been out for a while, 5, 10 years, and I kind of want a fresh start on a new MMO, but I want an MMO that's successful and has a good community behind it, got a good active community and people are playing all the time. Day night cycles, that's cool. Market, skill customization, housing. So it seems like they're gonna have a lot of stuff. And since our inspirations are from great games like Chrono Tiger, Stardew Valley, Graveyard Keeper, Stone Shard. So definitely, if you play any of these games, you're gonna love this game.
Which I'm gonna be honest with you guys here, is impossible. But you know what? It is never bad to set your goals high. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional gamer. And this right here, this is about as close as I will ever get to fulfilling that dream. Playing video games and being paid to play them, just not millions of dollars and at a very high skill level. Yeah, if you watch me playing video games, you know it is on the other side of the.
What games you been playing? Honestly, like I've been kind of hovering between MMOs and FPS. I'll play some Apex, some Fortnite. Like I played some Valorant recently. Um, I've recently like I was playing Black Desert a lot. This past year I was playing Rust. Last year I was playing a lot of GTA and stuff. But yeah, pretty much just like back and forth, like between either survival. I was playing like a lot of single player games too. Like I did buy a lot of single player games like Star Wars. Um, I got a whole list on Steam. Like I played so many games this year, but I really haven't stuck to one. Like the one I stuck the most, I guess, is Black Desert. That's the one I played the most this year of all the games.
Spectrum there. The game does.
And like for me, like I don't know, like MMOs seem to be a kind of game that can take your attention for a long time. Like FPS is like every year is like a new one, right? Or every couple of months is a new one. So like your attention kind of gets distracted. Unless you're really good at the game, then you're probably gonna play it for a long time until it dies. And the only FPS games that are like really like surviving is like Counter Strike, um, Fortnite, Apex, Valorant. Um, so unless you're playing one of those, not really much. Like a few other shooters, like Rainbow Six and all that people like to play that. Yeah, I'm gonna play through of Minecraft Dungeons game again. It's super fun, like a simple Diablo. Yeah, Minecraft Dungeons. Not gonna lie, that was a good game. Like,
Does have a fantasy setting with dwarves, dragons, elves, and a lot more that we'll get to experience on our own. Rakanto seems to be a unique MMO with a lot of passion from the people working on it. Will it be the next big MMORPG? Not a chance. Can it find an audience that appreciates and enjoys it though? Definitely, and who knows, maybe you'll be one of those people. Drakantos, if we're lucky, should be releasing at some point in 2024 onto Steam, so keep an eye out for it. Now, if Drakantos is not an MMO you're particularly interested in, absolutely no problem. I got you covered with 2 different videos on screen right now that might be.
yeah. So I did watch this video, um, and that basically covered like all the MMOs that are. I don't know if you want to watch this video or not, but it is gonna cover all the MMOs that are gonna come out within this year, next year, and stuff. Now there are other videos and stuff. They're all pretty much the same concept, same list. A lot of people were hoping that Terrace Land was gonna be really good. and it looks like a really good game. It looks like it has a lot of potential to be a great game. The only problem is, when it releases and stuff, the monetization and everything else is gonna work out good. Um, yeah, like I have a few different videos, just random stuff. So the game that I'm on right now is Stolen Liberty. Um, and this is another great MMO that I think
Shape since it was first.
has a lot of potential. But it all depends on the monetization for me as well. If it's too pay to win. The only thing I don't like about these videos is finding super fun games like that one, but have to wait for a release date. Yeah.
First
Yeah.
announced a top-down isometric MMO under the title Lineage Eternal.
A lot of these games have been worked on for years. Like a lot of these MMOs were being worked on when we were in our 20s, and now they're finally um announcing release dates. So, it takes them 8-10 years to make a game. So now we're hearing about them. So now is our chance to kind of like, all right, let's look at all the videos, let's look at all the gameplay, let's see what's going on. Because one of these games could be the next top 5 MMO on the list, and take another, someone else's spot or whatever. And you could be one of those people that happens to enjoy the game, and I don't know, it can really pop off for you, and you can have a lot of great experiences playing the game, even if you're not streaming it. You can make a lot of friends, make a lot of connections that you probably wouldn't thought of. We all need that. We all need that connection and the feeling of just playing
That had
games
been in
with people.
development since 2011, Lineage 3, Project TL after the poor reception they'd received during internal test phases. And finally, in March 2022, NCSoft revealed to the world Throne and Liberty. Accompanied by an incredible trailer, players were excited. This could be the next Lineage, the next Ion, the next Blade and Soul. Okay, well, maybe not the next Blade and Soul. Blade and Soul had certain assets, personality, that allowed for a degree of separation from most other MMOs. Terra had that too. Throne and Liberty was sold to us as this gorgeous, enormous open-world action-packed
A lot of assets,
PvE
my friend.
And then the betas came, and what we saw had us a little bit more concerned. Autoplay, large grinds, very subpar graphics, but this is what we'd come to expect of the genre. Grandiose ideas, broken promises, and unparalleled disappointment. NCSoft promised us that they were listening, however, and they have made numerous alterations since, which we'll touch on over the course of this video, including the release date, additional beta tests, and more. Throne and Liberty is not going to appeal to everyone, just like neither Final Fantasy XIV nor World of Warcraft do. And if you feel that this is the case for you, I urge you to check out a video that we did recently where we list over 50 confirmed MMOs, no blockchain, no NFTs, that are all confirmed to be releasing in the next few years. Otherwise,
Game again,
let's
Diablo
continue.
4.
Did you know that Throne and Liberty was going to
Yeah, Diablo 4 seems like a good game, not gonna lie. I don't know, for me, I never played the first one, so, I don't know, for me, I feel like I missed out a lot of the storyline, so I don't know if if that'll sit right for me. I want to play a game, fresh, the first version of it, and see how far it goes. It sucks that I kind of missed out on certain ones. I used to play WoW when it first came out, but I never really stuck to it, so, it is what it is. But it'd be kind of nice to find one, late game, basically. Try to find a game.
have a functional gacha system? Oh yeah. After seeing the success of gacha in other games and other genres, how could you not want to implement it? Blue Protocol has gacha for cosmetics, same with PSO2 and PSO2 New Genesis. Tower Fantasy has gacha for weapons. Slowly, gacha is becoming more prevalent, just like it did with mobile games. While it's still probably a ways off before it becomes mainstream in MMOs, it is nevertheless worth noting that it was at one stage going to exist within Throne and Liberty, and thankfully, NCSoft opted against this. As noted, while Korean players were more accepting of gacha, Western players were more positively receptive of a seasonal pass, which is the direction that we're going. On November 2nd, NCSoft held a large live stream in anticipation of the game's Korean release, which included quite a sizable amount of information. Let's recap, beginning with the release date, as I believe that's probably one of the most noteworthy bits of information released. Before we do, though, allow me to take a moment here to thank our incredible patrons over on Patreon who allow for me to continue to do videos like this every week. I truly appreciate it. Now, let's get into the recap.
It's coming out very soon for Korea.
Throne Liberty would be releasing on December 7th, 2023. This confirmation was made during a Korean live stream by NCSoft themselves. This was not made in an English live stream by Amazon Game Studios. There have been a number of threads made on Reddit and rumors spread throughout social media that this release is pertaining to the global version of the game as well.
I wish it was global launch, bro. Because if it was a global launch, it would be
amazing. If Amazon were to be releasing the
dude.
game next month, they would have announced it themselves. On the contrary, Amazon still lists the release date for Throne and Liberty as 2024. With this in mind, it's a safe bet to assume December 7 is pertaining to the Korean release and not global. And the term global here doesn't really mean global, as there are still regions that will not have access to it. The cash out will feature 2 types of battle passes, the Growth Pass and Battle Pass.
Look at that.
Skins that
you can
provide
turn into a
statistical
bird,
benefits, transformation items,
fly and
what
shit.
we've seen in Ion, I'd expect, and pets that
Look at all the
do,
fireworks. That's
in
dope.
fact, provide statistical benefits. Whether those pets are also obtainable in-game or will provide higher stats than pets that are remains to be seen, but this is definitely hinting towards a potential form of pay-to-win. Throne and Liberty was advertised as an action MMO for many years, during its Lineage Eternal days, Project TL days, and even finalizing its Throne and Liberty identity.
Yeah, I don't mind paying for, like, just like I think I'm on the same boat as most people here, but especially in the West, we don't mind paying for subscriptions, you know, $5, $10, whatever, a month, we don't mind paying. We don't mind buying cosmetics, you know, things that doesn't necessarily progress our character, but we don't mind doing. I mean, there are plenty of people in the West that don't mind being whales. It's just not as common, you know, like a lot of people want to grind and work for the stuff because it feels that much satisfying for us, because that's how we were kind of brought up in video games. Is you got to grind for it, you know, you got to find it, you got to search for it, you know, only 1% of people find it. And maybe that's why, like, we're so, you know, so tough about it, and we're like, nope, we want what we want, and we don't mind paying to support the game, but we don't want anything that's gonna, like, make someone take an advantage.
However, it recently came out that the game would feature a tab target combat system, which I know is going to upset quite a lot of players that believe action MMOs are just better, herder, when the reality is the most popular MMOs that exist right now provide evidence to the contrary. The devs elaborated on this, stating that they wanted to focus on build and skill strategy instead of aiming ability.
I mean, World of Warcraft is literally click. You know, like click, and you press your hotkeys, right? You know, you got other games that RuneScape, you know, is still popular, and it's just click, you know. What other games that are out? Like, most MMOs are mostly click based, right? Or tab target, that are the most popular ones, and the ones that are action based, they're popular for a little bit, and then they kind of die off a little bit. I mean, the one that's, I guess, the most popular that's action MMO is Lost Ark, would be the most popular one. But everything else is kind of like, they kind of die off a little bit after the first year.
Abilities, which makes sense. Many of us MMO players don't have the reflexes that we had a decade ago. They also confirmed the change to the UI, which was a very common complaint during beta testing.
What are you trying to say, sir? I felt like that was a personal attack. Very personal, sir. Listen. Just because we're old doesn't mean we still don't got it, alright? Got a lot more wisdom, more intelligence, okay? We could use that to our advantage, you know, more experience, you know? Alright?
Many players thought that it looked like a mobile game, they themselves even stating that this was the case. Throne and Liberty
I'm actually
was
getting
built
some new
around
emotes.
auto-hunting, large
I
numbers
think I
of
got one
monsters
that's
to
actually
kill,
a hydrate
large
one.
numbers of items to loot, This is the foundation of the game,
Jesus
with the devs
Christ.
confirming that it would take
You want me to
roughly
drown
a year
myself?
playing 1 to 2 hours per day, 7 days a week to reach max level. All of this has been
What the hell's
altered,
wrong
however,
with
with
you?
autoplay mostly removed,
Jesus
and
Christ.
XP required to level reduced to
Trying
1/10
to
of
throw a
what it once
tsunami on
was,
me and shit.
allowing you to hit max level within roughly a month.
Oh,
However,
yeah.
from what
Wavy
I've
be
seen of other players
crazy.
during the beta, while auto hunting was
I don't know if
removed,
you've seen the new
reason
emotes that
for
I
auto
have,
hunting
but
was
I
still
just
present,
made a whole
meaning
bunch
that
of
you were
new
still
emotes
required to
here.
grind, just manually, instead of setting it to auto and actually playing
Bunch of
something
new
fun.
emotes
I guess we'll
here.
see if this
I'm gonna have
works out
more
or not.
though.
There are going to be 2 types of raids
At the
present,
bottom.
PvE
Oh, that's
and PvP.
a whole fucking ocean, my
PvE
dude.
will reside in the open world. Field boss
The whole
raids
fucking
and
ocean
arc
right there.
bosses fall into this category, where guild raids are a prime example of PvE specific raids. Drops from guild raids cannot be
But
sold.
yeah, I'm gonna have
or
more
traded
emotes
to other
coming. 10
players,
more
and are instead
emotes.
found to your
I'm
character.
gonna
Throne and Liberty
put
was
them in the
originally
free
going to be
slots
playable
for the
on
followers
mobile
and
as
stuff.
well, but after the beta, the team
Some of
decided to scrap
it's subject to
mobile
change.
functionality in
Obviously,
its
some of
entirety
these
based off of the critical negative
some of these subs, like these are all they're all, I had them all in sub tier 1, but some of them are tier 2 and tier 3. But I will be moving some of these around because I only have so many slots, so I can get some in the bits, get some in the followers, the free. Like I have like up to 5 free emotes.
reception from both
So I'm gonna put 5 of those there, and then get some for tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 subs.
Korean and Western players, reiterating their decision to focus on PC. This honestly could have been where the focus on auto hunting came from. NCSoft have
Looks
stated
just like
that
me,
they
right?
plan on rolling out 3 major updates per year. There are 2 major updates planned after launch, including the new region called
Still got my
Talandre,
Lost Ark
3 to 4
emotes.
months after release. The second called Draker Rift, featuring a new species called the Dragonkin. Dungeons will be a little different to what we're used to. On the one hand, they absolutely require a group to complete. These are not at all targeted towards single or duo play. They're also referred to as field dungeons, with seamless access granted whenever you enter the area of the map. There are absolutely no restrictions present when running dungeons, including level restrictions, meaning that you could run an endgame dungeon at level 1 or a tutorial dungeon at max level with seemingly no scaling whatsoever. I can already foresee thousands of people selling carries for $50 a pop. I can also see a large
That's the only issue I have with certain MMOs. Like, dude, I don't want to carry, man. I know back in the day, like it was like that. Like sometimes that was okay because if you were having a tough time, it was like, all right, carry me. But now it's like, nah, I want to do it legit, you know.
discrepancy in terms of power between new and veteran players, including a lot of instances of elitism. Weather will also play a major part in dungeon
Elitism,
access,
of course.
which
You
is
know that. It's like
kind of
in every
interesting. An
MMO.
example was given
Every MMO is like that. You got some alpha guy that's level 102 for some reason, just max level, and he's just like walking around with his big ass great sword, just like, yeah, come fuck with me, yeah. Like, dude, what are you doing, man? Oh, fuck.
certain dungeons will only be accessible during rainy weather, which means if you're looking to run the dungeon and it's sunny, you kind of just sit there and hope that it rains soon. They did confirm the inclusion of instance dungeons as well, but these will feature objectives, kind of reminiscent to Mythic Plus dungeons in WoW. Weapons can be combined to create what the dev team
Yeah, I like so far the way they designed the menu and stuff, and seems like it's very everything's plays very well. You know, like some MMOs, everything's very scattered and complicated and stuff. It seems like at least for here, most of the things you're gonna be getting are weapon drops, and gear drop for the most part. I'm not really sure because look, if you see this, it says weapons, gear here. So I'm not sure if it's already like set to that, and then you scroll down here, and then there might be some more stuff like potions and other things down there. Obviously, this is your gear slot, you know, so you're gonna have 2 rings. It kind of reminds me of Black Desert with the accessories a little bit. You know, you got rings. Wait, what is that? A collar or a bracelet? Might be a bracelet. Belt, bracelet, and then necklace. Sorry, it just looked like a collar for some reason. Um. Anyways, there's a lot of great things about this.
States will be 21 unique class archetypes. This will add additional layers to
So the 21 unique classes that he's speaking about is the fact that you can what is it? Like you can have two classes basically, and you can combine them to make a unique class. For example, um, he has daggers right here. This is a class for like assassins, right? You can combine this with sword and shield, and it'll create one class there, right? And that class will have different properties that may help the dagger, because dagger is all about crit hit and critical strike and stuff. Um, so that's good for DPS and everything. And then I know the sword has a lot of good DPS, but the shield will create a lot of good defense. It's not a really, I don't know if that's a really, they say that there's some good combinations, but I don't think this is a good one. Like some of them are like the great sword with the sword and shield. Right, that's one good combination. The sword and shield with the spell book, which allows you to be a tank healer, which is what I want to do. And then there's obviously the sword and shield, which is I want to do that as well, which is also another great combination, which is basically like DPS to the max, and then obviously you got all your defense as well. So it's just like a good balance of defense and offense, because with the great sword you get all DPS, movement. You get to taunt the enemy, you get to stun them, you know, and then with the sword and shield, it's like you become a tank. It's like DPS tank.
class identity, as players will be able to create our own builds that work with our specific playstyle.
Yeah, so basically, like, you can combine, the meta, oh, this is the meta. I want to do the meta, right? I want to have the best overall DPS, the best defense, the best stats, right? Or you can just pick whatever you want that you feel comfortable with. Oh, I like the longbow and I like the greatsword. I'm gonna use them two together. So I can have some range and then I can have some close range. Um, it they can still be effective. You never know. The games haven't came out yet. So who's to say that these are the meta? It's just some people have already beta tested the game and they're already giving their opinions on what they feel is the best setup. A lot of people are even already doing pre-guides of, what's the best class setups.
This was further elaborated on by stating that there are no classes present in-game. Rather, players will choose which weapons they want to use and build from there. And that was everything covered. A lot of changes have been made, some for the better, some for the worse. Amazon are still preparing for their global release alongside Blue Protocol, since no matter what happens, these two games are going to coincide with and likely inhibit the success of one another releasing in too close a proximity. I'm curious to see if anything else will change in the global version before it releases, after public beta tests are held, but only time will tell. If Throne and Liberty, however, is not of any interest to you, then absolutely no problem. Consider
Yeah, so basically, overall, the game is gonna be releasing in Korea on December 7th, early 2024 for the West. Um, gonna be a really nice, good-looking MMO. Kind of looks like Black Desert. Kind of looks like Lost Ark. So it definitely got a lot of those feels, right? Those vibes. And if you like those games, Lost Ark and Black Desert, this is a game for you. Or if you just want to try a new MMO, and you're kind of like burnt out with the MMO you're playing or whatever game you are, you can always try it out. They are a lot of these games, these MMOs have beta signups as well. Um, it's not guaranteed that if you sign up, you're gonna get access to the beta and you're gonna be able to play the game, but at least um, you get to see if you get a chance to get in there. Obviously, beta tested and signed up for a lot of these things. Well, beta tested, sign up. I didn't actually test anything out just yet, but it'd be nice. you know, and if I do, I'll definitely try to release some videos on it. Okay. So we did see those 2 videos there. Um, let's see here. So PAX Die is another MMO that's also releasing pretty soon, I believe. And they are doing testing as well for it. So if you're into like different MMOs, you know, this is
awesome survival sandbox game.
this is like a so this is very different from other MMOs. It's a very survival sandbox. I feel like it's there. They say it's gonna be a lot of PvP in there because it's gonna be like you make a fortress or you make a castle or whatever you want to make, and you know people can invade your castle, your fortress and stuff, and you kind of have to PvP and fight and stuff.
Game Valheim was a persistent MMO. Well, today we're taking a look at PAX Day, a new medieval survival sandbox MMO with land claiming, building, gathering, crafting, combat exploration, and more. Now, while this is an MMO, it's not exactly an MMORPG like World of Warcraft or the upcoming Ashes of Creation is aiming to be. So this is more of a massively multiplayer survival sandbox game instead of a massively multiplayer role-playing game with levels and classes like you might be used to. If you love games like Minecraft, Valheim, Ark Survival Evolved, or others in this sort of genre, then PAX Day is looking super intriguing for what it is aiming to accomplish. The world of the game is massive at 300 square kilometers with 4 provinces and over 20 valleys where players can claim land in, and it's made in Unreal Engine 5, so we can expect some really top tier visuals. Mainframe Industries are listed as the developers and publishers on the Steam page, and this is their only title. Their website reassures us that their team contains veteran developers from studios like Blizzard Entertainment, Remedy, Ubisoft, and Next Games, and they are also an independent studio. Now, while we should still remain cautious with this being their first title, there has been a recent alpha test in which players who have played it have given their impressions, and from what I can see it looks pretty positive. The test was purely focused on peaceful gameplay, with things like gathering, crafting, and building being the main focus of the features to test in this alpha, and it seemed like those who enjoyed survival games and tested it found themselves quite at home playing this and testing out the different systems and mechanics. In a Eurogamer article from March where they got to see a presentation for the game, we can glean that there will be no NPCs besides monsters in the world of PAX Day.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool to note too, is that there's no NPCs in this game. So like literally like if you wanted to find missions or whatever, you had to look for clues and like around environments and landscapes and stuff, and you can find like basically like you find hidden lore and clues to complete quests and stuff. It's very not your standard way of doing things, right? You go click, you talk to like 1,000 NPCs end game, then you fucking grind for your gear, right? Yeah, this is definitely not that.
Settlements and villages are going to be player-made, and the economy will be player-led, with different groups focusing or specializing in different crafting or gathering aspects, leading to it being a social MMO as they're targeting, where players will create quests together. Basically, everything in the world will be produced by players. Your clan will need clothes, walls, food, weapons, and armor. Others may require tools to gather materials or craft, and with the game being a social sandbox MMO, it sounds perfect if you like the idea of being a go-to person in your area, your clan, your server, for crafting specific items or gathering specific materials, so you can really haggle your way into getting known in the game. But it's not all building and crafting. Monsters are a big focus too, with raids and dungeons set to be in the game. We will gain abilities for specific weapons based on how much we use those weapons, and magic will be present as well, seemingly through powerful gear items. So, weapons and gear will function more so as your class or role in the group, as opposed to picking a class when creating a character.
Damn.
They give an example of this on their forum, where they
Don't
say
play.
a tank build could potentially involve combining full plate armor, the thunderous visage, which is able to trigger or increase your aggro, along with the soothing choker, a medallion that can cast a lull spell, great for avoiding aggroing a full room in a single pull. They also say you could opt for a more hybrid option by swapping out some of your plate armor for leather armor and going for a healing spell with the Hypnotic Band, a ring that has a mesmerizing spell. So items will play a large role in defining your playstyle and role in your team. They also say there's a lot more to the world than meets the eye, with some crazy looking monsters, ghosts, and evil out there to find. Within the game, there are areas called Heartlands, and these are like safe zones where players can build and
I always wanted to be a
socialize,
tank killer,
but
just never, it was never there.
Heartland areas, PvP is going to be enabled, and while I cannot confirm it, I also believe that you can build outside of these Heartland areas, making for some interesting situations.
Like all this stuff is being built by people.
I like the idea of guilds expanding their reach into the PvP
like it's
zones,
not there.
setting up forward
People have to
bases
build
to
it.
secure a presence over a certain resource or material.
It's
And
all
it sounds
built by
like some
players.
cool things could happen from that.
Pretty crazy.
Meanwhile, for more casual, peaceful players, you can safely build your base in the Heartlands and then venture out without the risk of losing your base. And you really will want to adventure out because the world is massive and there's a lot to explore. There's meant to be mysteries to uncover about the ancient past of the world, which was supposedly abandoned by a once benevolent god, and now an evil is brewing and growing and expanding into the world, so we will encounter all manner of evil beings and monsters out there. Essentially, once you have a nice home base and some gear, your goal is to go exploring and searching for secrets and treasure and more to bring back to your clan if you can make it back. Now, I haven't played the game for myself, but I do love survival games, and from what I can see, it is looking like it could be a blast to play with a group. Having dedicated roles between yourself and your friends or your guild to make something really cool out in the world and have a presence sounds pretty fun. Think of the impact that the big guilds had in New World, except everything is made solely by the player. And with the fact that the world is far, far bigger, this does sound pretty interesting. Of course, with building being such a big focus, this is probably going to be a very enjoyable game for those that enjoy the base building aspects of other games like Ark, Valheim, Minecraft, and more.
Yeah, so if you love building, this is a great game for you because you can do it with a group of people. You could be a designated builder, fighter, warrior, whatever, raider, dungeoner, and you can just, yeah, be in a big group of people, a guild, and just build stuff. I've seen some videos of other people creating some cool stuff. You can even build in the water. It's pretty cool.
More. And speaking of building, I wanted to leave you guys with this clip where you can see some of it in action, and honestly, I just love the way the graphics look.
I mean, all this stuff is being built by somebody. That girl right there. Builder Cataline. Okay? Building shit. Get up. Probably chop this shit down. Build this shit. Don't seem that difficult. You pick a texture probably. You place it. You got the materials, they'll place it for you. You're probably in some building mode real quick. So she's probably seeing everything that we can't see. What the heck? You see that? Making small little homes. Like, make up your mind. Pick a roof, girl. Hold on. I have to look at all the options. Do you want the roof to come out, or do you want the roof to stay like this? Let me see. Looks pretty cool, you know. Would disappear just good. But the problem with a lot of these games is that they do end up dying off, right? So how do you keep people's attention, right? Which is pretty good for, like, you know, you got dungeons, raids, you got the crafting element, you got the guild element, so people are going to be in a big group friends, communicating, talking. Yeah, and you're gonna just go out in the world and just have some PvP fun and do whatever you want to do. I think it could work. It's just like Rust, but like in a bigger scale, right? And just more things to do, right? MMO things, you know. I mean, imagine Rust as an MMO. I mean, it could happen, you know. You're really not that far from it. You just gotta make some dungeons and raids, create some monsters. Yeah, so I did watch some content on this. It's pretty good. Someone says pack die and aspiration of the future of MMOs.
Hey, what up, boys?
Yeah, we will watch this, but first, they want to watch what is this? Oh yeah, so there's the new MMO, The Ghost, another cool MMO that I did want to check out. And then I just seen this, and I guess this guy works for Blizzard. So, oh, he used to work for Blizzard, and as I can see, X Riot and Blizzard making their own MMO. So I guess he's one of the people making Ghost. So this is pretty exciting stuff. I want to see.
I am joined here by Mr. Greg Street, aka Ghostcrawler, once again, but this time under a different banner. Last time I spoke to him, we were talking about the Riot MMO. This time, we get to talk about the Ghost, codename Ghost MMO, under the fantastic Pixel Castle banner. And I do want to give a major shout out to not only Greg, but also his team, Fantastic Pixel Castle, for allowing me this opportunity once again to talk to Greg. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Greg, could you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Greg. I started a new game studio this year. We're about 15 to 17 people now. We're making an MMO. Super exciting. Like one of the things I've always cared a lot about is talking to players. And now that there is, now that I don't really have a boss, I can talk to players as much as I want. So it's kind of fun not having PR people say what you can say or not say.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to start this interview by letting you guys know that I do have a lingering cough. I'm going to try my best to try and mute it or cough away from the mic. So I do apologize for that. I was sick earlier. So, Greg, I asked your team if they needed me to send my questions and talking points to you ahead of time, and they said that I don't need to. So I didn't, because I thought it would be better to get a genuine reaction and like a natural, I guess more natural, less prepared answer. So yeah, I just want to give you a heads up.
Honestly, that's what I prefer, just for the reason you said.
Okay.
Sometimes people feel like they have to send the questions to you ahead of time, but it's more fun for me to catch them on the fly.
Right. Well, I'm excited. Thank you once again for this opportunity. I do obviously want to talk a lot about your MMO. And before we get into this, though, I would like to ask you this just for a little bit of clarity, and just so you know, if there's anything you don't want to answer, feel free. But my job as a journalist or content creator, I'm just gonna ask. So I do apologize if I cross any lines. I don't think I will, but no. Because we've spoken before and everything, so I'm pretty sure we'll be okay with it. You left Riot, okay? You left Riot, and from our understanding was that you left Riot because of family stuff going on. And obviously, I'm sure that all of that worked out. However, immediately after, it was like, oh, I'm stepping away because family stuff. But then it was like all of a sudden, oh, I'm also starting this MMO with this new team. So my question to you is, I'm sure the real life stuff had a lot to do with that decision, of course. But was that decision to leave Riot, did it have anything to do with Fantastic Pixel Castle? If so, how much?
Yeah, so kind of the order of events. I've been pretty open about this. My brother and father passed away really suddenly, and that threw my whole family for a loop. And I felt like I needed to take some time off and focus on that. And I didn't feel like I was in a position to kind of be the leader or the spokesperson for the Riot MMO. I parted on really good terms. I have a ton of friends at Riot. We talk all the time. I hope their game is successful. Worlds is coming up. I'm going to watch it like everyone else. So I moved to Texas, which is where I am now, and dealt with the family stuff as much as you can. Some of it's ongoing. There's a lot of paperwork. I don't recommend anyone in your family dying because it's just a lot of there's a lot of forms you have to fill out.
Yeah.
And then at some point I'm like, okay, what am I going to do like now?
It's funny how he says, I don't recommend you know how many people die. Yeah, sir. I'm going to try to make sure that everyone is staying alive. All right. Do the best that I do the best that I can to make sure that everyone is healthy. Just put all their brains into robot bodies. It's simpler.
I wasn't ready to retire. The town I live in is very small. If I wanted a job in this town, it would basically be like working with cows or something, because that's all that's really going on here. And I thought about returning to Riot and like, what would I do there? And I talked to some other companies. I talked to a lot of big studios that everyone's familiar with. I talked to like VCs about, do I start my own company and what does that look like? And the offer I got from NetEase was frankly a little nuts, where they said, look, we would love for you to make your own studio and make whatever game that you feel inspired to make, and we'll support you and we'll fund the studio. And we have all of these support teams that can help, but it's up to you if you use them or not. Like there's not even an obligation to use them. And I said, this really sounds too good to be true. I feel like I'm missing something.
That was NetEase that had pitched you that.
Yeah.
So they came in and offered you this after you had stepped away from Riot.
Exactly.
And you're going through that.
They knew I was a free agent and kind of thinking about what I wanted to do next. And by the way, several other companies reached out and and tried to make something like this work, but the NetEase deal was by far the sweetest. And I'm like, okay, let's try it.
Okay, so I was gonna actually ask you about NetEase towards the end, but while we're on the topic, I would like to ask you about that dynamic. It does sound amazing. The way I watched the broadcast that you guys had, and like you said, it sounds too good to be true. Yeah. If they are fronting that bill, though, I'm sure it comes with some kind of power in on their side, though. Or is that not how it works? I'm just wondering, in the beginning, I'm sure it's all great, but is there a possibility that in the future, all of a sudden it's like, hey, let's we're gonna kind of step in here, or no, we don't think we really want you to do that anymore, or you know what I mean? Can it turn into one of those situations?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, making games. Okay. Things can change, and am I 100% certain that things are going to stay as good as they are now? Well, of course not. Maybe they change their minds. Maybe they decide this dynamic isn't working for them. I've seen no indication of that. Right. And, it would not be great public look for them to suddenly be like, oh yeah, we changed our mind. We're not going to make these games after all, after we've been so open about it. Right. So I'm as confident, I think, as you can be. There's no certainty, but they control the budget. Like, they are making an investment, and really that's the way we think about it, is they're investing in our company,
right? And
they are hoping for return on that investment, but they're not going to say you need to make this kind of game, or they're not saying it has to be on mobile, and in fact the game is not on mobile. They're making no real requirements at all. They're offering an advice where we want it. Sure. They've made a lot of games, and they do have a lot of expertise with MMOs in particular, but like I said, it's been great. And I did not realize how much in my career I needed that right now. I needed the creative freedom, because I love Riot and I love Blizzard and I love Microsoft where I worked before that. But all big companies have these stakeholder relationships where you have a boss and they have a boss, and up at the top are these executives, and they come in sometimes and they make demands, or they want confidence that what you're doing is right. And that that stakeholder management takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it has been so freeing to not have to deal with that, to just be like, let's focus on making the game. And NetEase really understood that. They said making games is hard. We want to remove every distraction possible so that you can just focus on making the game.
Right.
It's
That's
crazy.
pretty awesome. Like
I saw Necrit's recent video.
when like I mean like you gotta think of it, like if you're someone who's developed games for a long time and you decide you want to start your own company, you're gonna need people that if you don't have your own money per se to do the whole thing, start the whole company, you have people that are willing to do it for you, or who are willing to invest in you. And yeah, you can just launch a game and with all the support and resources at your hand, and with a great team that you can handpick yourself, and you can just see how it goes. And if you put your heart and soul into it, I'm sure it's gonna come out great.
Video talking about it. I feel like he made a great example when he was talking about Tencent's relationship with Riot. At the end of the day, Riot does make their own decisions, and they've been doing a great job with it. Is it kind of similar to that type of thing that you?
Yeah, it was really similar. Tencent would say, hey, here's this, I don't know, this other game in China tried this thing. Maybe you want to consider that for League of Legends. And sometimes we'd consider it, and sometimes say, yeah, that's not going to work. And they're like, okay. And it was great. So
Right.
it's pretty similar to that relationship. Maybe I have even more creative freedom now than I did with Tencent, but it's pretty good.
I think the fact that we're able to do this, just like even this for me, for those of you who don't know, I've talked to Greg prior, and I remember our original interview that I had when you were under the Riot banner. I think that podcast was almost 2 hours, and then when I actually published it with all the cuts that I had to make, it was like, this is like a 30-minute podcast. I was like, oh my gosh. So the fact, yeah, I definitely can see that even from the perspective of a content creator, your freedom and just being able to, like, even your last broadcast, you guys were able to just speak and take questions and answer pretty freely. So I think that's fantastic to see. Yeah. So in regard, so the last thing on NetEase that I do want to ask you is, it doesn't sound like you're really getting pressured by NetEase. So that sounds great. I feel like that's extremely important for like the beginning of a professional relationship.
If anything, we're getting a little bit of anti-pressure. And what I mean by that is I'm impatient. I want to go. I want to make this game. And we feel like we have a really good head start. And NetEase will caution us and say, like, there's no rush. Like, there's no deadline. Take the time you need to do it right. And I'll say, oh, I really appreciate that. That's wonderful. But, this is coming from within. We're not trying to hit a date. We just, games take a lot of time. And so we want to get going.
That was what I was going to actually ask you. Is there a deadline, not for you guys, but like from the perspective of NetEase, do they have any type of deadline or a minimum that they're expecting? Or is it just straight up, hey, we believe you guys, do it?
Yeah, they believe. I mean, what they would say is they're very picky about who they work with. Like, they're not just going to give anyone a studio. And there's some other, I have some other colleagues that have studios with them now. But they've even said, like, hey, if the first game doesn't work, let's make another game. Like, making games is hard, and you try and you hope that the first game is a big hit, but sometimes it doesn't work out. And that attitude is so unique and so healthy.
Yeah,
so they literally told you that. They said
that is very fucking healthy. Like, you have to imagine, like, the amount of pressure these game companies are on, and some of them are being pressured to have a deadline. And when they don't produce, it's like, for some people, it's like that's the end of their career. And for a company to just be like, hey, take your time, take all the time you need. Well, obviously, like, they know there's a certain X amount of time you need to make a game, but don't feel like you need to rush. There's not a deadline per se. And that's pretty good. You know, like you're gonna feel more confident about what you're doing. Obviously you are taking your time to make it great, but yeah, you're just gonna release it when you have that gut feeling like, hey, I think it's ready. And the whole team's gonna be like, yeah, it's ready.
Workout, we'll just try again.
Yeah, yeah. No talk of like, oh, we're shutting the studio down or layoffs or anything. They're like, yeah, we'll try again. Sometimes the first game you're just kind of learning the IP, or you're learning
Yeah.
the engine or how the team gels. And sometimes it's that sophomore effort that really busts out. And I hope not. I want Ghost to be a
Sure.
big success, but
I
the fact that they're willing to give us that much freedom and support,
right.
it's crazy.
I could totally picture that meeting that you have with them. They're like, "Oh, if you don't get it the first time, and you're just, Greg just out there, he's like, do you not see my team? Like, what do you mean? It's like, do you not know who's on this team? What are you talking about?" But that's awesome. That sounds that sounds amazing, and I think that clears up a lot of questions that I personally had. I really wanted to know that dynamic and just the vibe of it, because like, just me along with a lot of other people, we hear NetEase and we're like, you know what I mean? Like, but it sounds like that dynamic is pretty healthy, and that's really great to see.
Yeah.
That is.
I mean, I honestly had a lot of options. I didn't know what was going to happen when I started looking for work. I had a lot of options, and this one was just a no brainer. So it wasn't
Right.
like I was settling at all. It's like
Right.
I've this is the happiest I've been in my career, and I've talked to so many of the other first party studio leads, and they'll say the same thing. It's like this is
Right.
the best setup they've had.
Right. Okay, so I do want to get into these questions because I've got a lot, and I don't think we're gonna get through all of them. I'm gonna try my best to get through
Cool.
all of these, and I do
I'll try
want.
not to be long winded. I can talk a
No,
lot,
you're
so I'll
fine.
try to give short answers.
You're totally fine. Okay, so the first thing I want to ask you about are these shards, the blue shards
Yeah.
and the red shards. Now, I would love for you to help me try to understand how this is going to work and the inspiration behind it. And I'm just having a hard time really, like, I get the system, but I'm just having a little bit of a difficult time figuring out how it's going to work. So like immediately based off of what I heard in the broadcast was I'm thinking, okay, red shards sounds like World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Blue shards sounds like V Rising or something along the
Yeah.
lines of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that an accurate representation of what's going on here?
It's not bad. The tweak I would say is it's still an MMO. It's not like you're switching genres or anything like that.
Okay.
Really, the genesis for the whole thing was older MMOs, like back in the day, going back to like Ultima Online, RuneScape,
Oh, damn.
even Star Wars Galaxies, made this promise that you are going to be able to make a difference in the world. Like you as a player, you can go out there and make changes that will affect what's happening. Ultima Online made this promise that if you go out and kill all the deer in the forest, the dragons are going to get hungry, so maybe they're going to come into
Yeah.
your town. And that was why a lot of us got hooked on MMOs. Over time, some of that has been filtered out, and there's good reasons it happened.
Yeah.
If you kill the boss and the boss stays dead, like what are all the other players going to do, right? Or we got excited about building like V Rising or Rust or Valheim, but said, what does building look like on a zone with lots of other players? You're going to have like it's going to look like this dense city of just all of these buildings together, and then you're going to have people like making phallic symbols or bad words or just interfering with the environment you want to create. And that's when it kind of clicked that maybe the answer is just to have both public servers and private servers. And certainly not the first game to come up with the idea of private servers, but really try to mix that together, where in the private server you're in control. If you want it just to be you and your friends and you do whatever you want, that's cool. If you want to let a lot of people in and have a little more chaos, that's cool too, but you're in control of that.
Right.
But in order to get that big, massive multiplayer feeling that we all love, we also need zones that are epic and they're handcrafted, and there are world bosses and puzzles and rare spawns and things like that, where there are a lot of other people. But because they're not permanent, they respawn in the way Final Fantasy, enemies respawn. you won't have that. You won't be able to put your fingerprint on it, but it ensures that everyone will have a good time. You don't have to worry about, oh, someone
Right.
killed the boss, and now it's gone for everyone.
Okay, so we've got these two different shards. Part of what I personally love when it comes to MMOs is that I'm in this world. My character, I'm immersed. Having this system, do you think it's going to cause a bit of a disconnect for that type of with that type of experience? Because you have people that are now scattered. It's not, you know, like in Black Desert or Lost Ark within your server. I know these games have channels, but like World of Warcraft, you're in your server, everyone's there. You know, you're there, you're somewhere in that world. Do you think having these blue shards are going to cause a disconnect and have players kind of scattered to where the red shard maybe doesn't feel as massively multiplayer anymore, and maybe it starts feeling like, hey, this is just where you go to experience the theme park content, and then it's back to the blue shards?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, all of these are risks, and it's the kind of thing we're going to have to play test and further the design and get feedback on. Our hope is that the people you hang out with, your group, your guild, the people you like to play with, they're probably in the blue shard with you, and you all are doing stuff and having fun. And once in a while, you need to make an expedition into the red zone. Like someone says, "Hey, I need a reagent to finish this recipe I'm working on," or someone says, "Hey, I'm looking for this rare drop, and someone told me the boss just is up." Or you want to, you want to go raid, or you want to do something like that. You all get together and you're like, "Okay, we're going to go out into the red shard. Maybe we're going to die. It's going to be tough. And then we'll bring our spoils back to the blue shard and kind of use that to invest in the community we're building there."
Right.
Because even when you're playing World of Warcraft, the reality is your friends are probably scattered in lots of different zones and doing lots of different dungeons. And you're talking to them. You're probably in Discord or something chatting with them. And then periodically you're like, okay, everyone can get together now and let's go do a dungeon. But you're not shoulder to shoulder with them all of the time.
The structure of these shards, is it going to feel like, hey, I'm in the red shard right now, I want to go to this blue shard? Is it gonna literally feel like I'm selecting a server and I'm entering it like some kind of first person shooter or like V Rising type of game? Or is it gonna be a little bit more connected to a world where it feels like I'm entering a part of the world that kind of puts me in this blue? Like how's that transition going to work?
Yeah, we really want to avoid the list of servers, because I think that really takes you out of the world.
It
And that
does.
feels like you're playing UI at that point.
Yeah.
We want it to feel more natural of, maybe somebody opens a portal and then you can jump through the portal to get to the other, to get to the other zone.
Okay.
And we've even talked about, and again, this is super rough, so we don't know how it'll work, but imagine when you make a portal to go to the red shard, you have to put specific stones into this portal. And if you put in like the gold stone and the blue stone and the green stone, that'll open a portal to a particular red shard. So there's a little more, it's more in game than just picking a list off a server.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I just didn't want like that immersion to break. It's like I'm playing an MMO. Yeah.
And we don't want, if we can at all avoid it, we don't want a loading bar.
Right.
Like, we aren't exactly sure how travel from shard to shard works yet. Maybe it's a portal you step through, but another idea I heard that was kind of exciting is like when you're in Super Mario Galaxy and you're going to a different planet, Mario just kind of jumps up and flies through space, then lands on the new planet. And so there's no loading bar that comes up,
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. That would definitely make the experience better. The other question,
the new Spider-Man does a great job with that too. Like when you want to fast travel, you just appear in the new spot. There's not like a bar and cutscenes or anything.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see how you guys design that that system of connecting the blue and the red shard. I do have another concern about these shards, though, or not so much a concern, a little bit of a concern. I'm just kind of curious as to how this is going to work. One of the team members mentioned during the broadcast that blue shards, maybe you can full loot somebody, or it kind of has its own rules. How is that going to tie in with overall progression? Because it sounds like there will definitely be vertical progression in this game, as I think that's a massive W. But if you have these custom rules on these blue shards to the point where people can, like, I'm just going to create a blue shard where experience rates are juiced out 9,999% and,
Yeah.
you know, have a drop rate that's insane and then take it back to the red shards. Like, how does that dynamic work?
So you don't have full control over the rules. You have rules that you can apply. So for example, you might have a decision. I mean, you'll probably have a decision of how big do you want the shard to be. And going back to my example of the building the portal, if you use a pebble, it makes a little zone. If you use a rock, it makes a medium-sized zone. If you use a boulder, it makes a giant zone. But you don't have a scalar where you drag it in between. Likewise, you might apply a rule that says experience is doubled, but maybe that rule also says, but death is permanent or something like that. So you don't have, it's not like creating your own game.
Right.
I compare it sometimes to, I don't know, in Halo, I don't know if they still do this, at least originally, you would find skulls as you explore the map, and then you can apply the skulls to kind of make the experience harder or more different.
Right.
Hades did this a lot too. You'd find these rules and apply in the future, and it would change the experience in some ways. We're thinking more along that route rather than someone can just make this weird server that showers you with loot. And then the other thing I'd say about that is it's kind of okay if the loot you're getting showered with is like green items, the occasional blue items. And then to get the good stuff, you have to go into the red shards or into the dungeons and raids to get the really good loot.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. I do want to talk about that progression content, but really quick while we're still on the blue and red shards.
Yeah.
Servers, because one of the things that were mentioned, like someone asked in your broadcast about like Aussie servers, and it sounded like you guys were almost going for kind of like a mega server or something. I'm not sure. Could you kind of explain how the server system is going to work with the blue and red shards? Are blue shards going to also be in like specific locations? How does that work?
We would love to, like, a big goal for Ghost is to be able to play with your friends.
Yeah.
And it really sucks when you jump into an MMO and you're like, well, what server are you on? Oh, I'm on a different server. Maybe we're not going to be able to play together. We would love to get rid of the notion that there are servers. Like, you shouldn't roll up a character and then get a list of like, what server do you want to be in?
Right.
You should just jump in the game and play. And if you want to play with your friends, you find your friends and play with them.
Right.
There are hardware limitations of we can't have like 5 million people in one place, but we can spin off like extra servers when we need to, kind of behind the scenes to make sure everyone has a good experience, because you want enough players but not too many on a server. But I don't think we'll have permanent servers in the sense that like, oh, I play on Illidan and you play on Bronzebeard or something.
I'm wondering in terms of like location, I'm assuming that like the red shard is going to be like a set location or have set locations within the red shard, because I don't know how big it's going to be. And then the blue shards might be kind of like more custom to the player's location, kind of like how Diablo 4 does it. Is that kind of what we're thinking here? Or
the way we describe it is we don't have a great word for this yet. We have biomes. So you might say chapter 1, which is kind of like our first season, maybe it's all snowy biomes and everything kind of feels like the far north, feels like Skyrim or something. And so both the blue and red shards would adopt that terrain.
Okay.
And then maybe in chapter 2, we add a desert biome. And now in addition to going to the frozen areas, you also can go to a desert area and make it like that. There is a nuance where the terrain in the blue zones is randomly generated when you make a new one, because we really think that exploration part is really key to the survival feel. Like, we don't want it just to be wikied where someone says, well, the first thing you do is you go into this cave and you kill the wolf, and then you go over here and this is the right spot to build. We really like having to explore a little bit and figure out, are there wolves? Where are they living? Do they have something you want?
Right.
That works really well, even in games like Minecraft.
Well, that's very interesting. Just so you know, I meant like location as in like physical location. Like, I live in Korea. So like if I'm connecting to a, but that was interesting.
As a designer, I would love to say, there's no geographic boundaries. Realistically, there are some laws to follow around like data protection or taxes or dumb stuff like that we don't want to have to worry about. But I may not, I can't make the bold claim that you'll be able to play with any player in the world on their servers. Like, we may have to have servers in some some parts of the country. Like China would not surprise me if we have to have Chinese servers for Chinese players, but
Right.
we'll see. I couldn't tell you about Korea off the top of my head.
Gotcha. Understood. I want to talk a little bit more about that progression content. You guys did mention that, excuse me, dailies. You didn't really want to have this like daily system, which by the way, I thought was terrible for a game called ArcAge Unchained. ArcAge, vanilla ArcAge was like this sandbox game, and then and you progress however you want, you make currency however you want. Then all of a sudden, it just became this daily age, weekly raids, and it was just a terrible experience. Could you tell me a little bit more about the progression? Because like in your game, the blue shard sounds like a survival sandbox, and then the red shard sounds like a theme park. Like wow. So like, how is the progression going to work? Because those are two very different progression paths, progression content types. How does that work for Ghost?
It's an MMO at the end of the day. So you will want to get better gear, and probably will have, you know, white, green, blue, purple, something familiar like that. Within the blue shard, you'll probably craft more gear than in the average MMO, just because the fiction is kind of that you're out in the wilderness, and it doesn't make as much sense that there's lots of NPC vendors around. So imagine you craft a lot of gear, and periodically you need an important, you know, I need the magic crystal to finish my breastplate, and that can only be found in a red zone. So I'm gonna have to go to the red zone every now and then to get these rare reagents to finish my gear. And then when you reach end game and you really want the good stuff, you want the purple weapons. Well, that's probably in raids like it is in Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft. And so you would do that. The reason developers add daily quest, I mean, I worked on a game that added a lot of daily quest, is because players run out of content. And they're like, I'm bored. Give me a reason to log in. We think we have some reasons to log in. We want to have lots and lots of classes, so we can have lots and lots of alts. We want to have this ability of like re-rolling or pushing blue shards. You keep making new ones with crazier and crazier rules and kind of see what that experience is like. But we're also okay with players just taking a break until the next kind of tier comes out. Like, hey, we're done. Rather than grinding your face into the ground, let's just take a break until FPC makes new content. That's hard for subscription-based games because they really need to make sure players stay engaged with the game.
Yeah. So in regards to that, I'd love to hear your thoughts on games like Guild Wars 2 and Final Fantasy 14, because these two games on paper is like what everyone loves, what everyone wants. You know, it's not pay to win and, you know, all this good stuff, you know, but those two games also come with the stigma of having nothing to do. Now, I know I might get crucified for that comment because, of course, there's stuff to do. Of course, there's a lot of things to discover in Guild Wars 2. You guys, so I'm just talking about from a vertical progression perspective, because it's like horizontal content, right? There's a lot. You're like in Final Fantasy 14, you're done. Guild Wars 2, you're done with your gear, and it's like cosmetics and all that other stuff. From a perspective of vertical progression, you're pretty much done. And a lot of players do feel like they run out of things to do. Is that something that you want to avoid? Or do you kind of like the idea of Guild Wars 2 and Final Fantasy 14, where it's like, hey, well, you know, just take a break from our game and wait for our next update, and we'll be as frequent as we can when it comes to that?
I think sometimes when players say what they want more to do is they're saying, we're kind of done with this raid content. Can you make another raid really quickly? And the answer is no. It's hard. You know, raids are very expensive to make. And I don't mean money expensive. I just mean it takes a lot of time to get it right. You want to have a lot of good art. You want to have original bosses. You want to have a story that makes sense. So I don't think the right answer is, hey, we're going to make a new raid every month. That's just not realistic. So instead, you ask, like, well, what can we do to give players who aren't ready to put the game down more content to do? And I think that's where things like blue shards come in. It's where I just unlocked a new class, I want to try it out, where things like that come in. And then every year or so, we'll come out with a new tier with a new raid and things like that.
So classic hardcore Diablo 4, you have these games, and I've been told, well, my experience with Diablo 4, it really is the journey to level 100. It really is the journey to that level cap. Versus other games where it's like, no, you got to hit the end game, then the game starts. Like Lost Ark, for example. You know, where does Ghost fall in line with that?
Again, it's something we're going to have to play with a lot. I'm really hoping that the blue shard feature makes the level up experience more compelling.
Okay.
It's not, it can only be, even if the quests are really well written, at the end of the day, it's often like, hey, go kill 6 bears and then bring me this item. And it feels like your friends are at the end game waiting for you and you just have to get there as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping the blue shards make that adventuring experience more fun. At the other hand, like, there are people that just want to raid and they just want to get to the end game. So I don't think we'll throw up like silly blockers and say, well, it's going to be 6 months before you even are capable of stepping into the raid. For example, maybe we have, World of Warcraft has 60 levels at launch, and then you do the end game content. Maybe we only have 30 levels and you do the end game content, and then we add 10 more levels, in a new content that comes out much faster than like the 2 years or so it took when I was on WoW.
Right. Classes. Okay, so when I heard this, I was like, what? I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I heard you guys say that at launch, you were trying to come out with like 20 to 50 classes.
Yeah.
That sounds, I mean, it sounds great, by the way, to me, but it also sounds insane. Like it's not going to work insane because of class balance and just a lot of things.
Yeah.
What, like, is it possible? Like, what do you walk me through this? What's happening here? 20 to 50? That's crazy.
I think it's possible. The fantasy we're trying to achieve is maximum levels of diversity. So rather than having a warrior, you might have a gladiator who's all about showmanship, or you might have a shield and spear warrior, or you might have a berserker who fights with an axe and no armor. We're inspired a lot by games like Gloomhaven, Darkest Dungeon, even Pathfinder, that tend to have classes that are a little more out there. They don't have, Darkest Dungeon doesn't have a rogue. It has like a highwayman who has like a pistol.
Right.
They don't have like a cleric. They have they have what are the tanking classes as a leper. Just
right.
You can do a lot more interesting things where getting a new class feels more different. If I played a priest in World of Warcraft and then I unlocked the paladin, the healing is not that different. Yeah, the spells have different names and maybe the paladin's better at single target healing, but overall they're not that different. We would rather be able to experiment a lot. And the reason I think that's possible is because I worked on League of Legends, which has freaking 160 champions now. Those only have 4 abilities and they don't have a lot of build diversity, but I feel like there's a sweet spot in between launching with like 6 or 8 classes and 150 where we can have maybe not as many abilities as Final Fantasy, but still a lot of abilities and ways to customize your character, but still make it really fun when you unlock something new and you're like, how does this class work? I want to try that out.
You don't think you're going to run into any significant balance issues for both PvE and PvP if you're releasing these many classes at launch?
I mean, almost certainly we'll run into a lot of balance issues.
I mean, it's impossible to be perfectly balanced, of course. Like
it is. Yeah, and balance is important. And I mean, I worked on balance for most of my career, but you can also focus so much on balance that you smooth off all of the kind of fun, rough edges of the game. And you risk homogenization if you focus too much on balance, where you say, oh, well, this character has a stun and that makes them very powerful. So let's nerf the stun, or let's give everyone a stun. And both of those are kind of lame.
You don't like that approach?
Yeah, I don't like that approach. One of the things that works well in the MOBAs is your character might get banned, so you may not be able to play them. Or you probably have different characters. You may have a main, but you probably have other characters you can play as well. So we're hoping there's more of an element of that. Maybe you love, I don't know, let me think of a class real quick. Maybe you love to play the Dragoon. I don't even know what a Dragoon is, but say we have a Dragoon class. But the Dragoon is not good in this particular dungeon. Well, you decide, screw it, I'm going to try anyway. Or you say, hey, I know the Dragoon's just going to slow you guys down. Let me switch to my, my hoplite instead, and I'll play them in this dungeon. But because we have a lot of shared items and shared progression, you're not really hurting yourself by not playing your main all the time.
Gotcha. So it sounds okay. I got you. What about so I know you guys spoke on this a little bit, but it sounded like you guys want to obviously have different specialties and different roles for every class. So how would like tanks and healers and DPS carries, how would that fall in line? I guess what I'm asking is if you could explain a little bit more about your thoughts on Holy Trinity with this game.
Yeah, we're pretty certain we're going to be Holy Trinity. We have a lot of experience with it. It works. It's a lot of what players are expecting. I'm nervous if we came up with a game and we said there's no healing in this game, that you just lose like the 10 to 20% of players out there that love healing and they want to play a healer.
Right.
Another way to think about it that I bring up a lot is, if you want to make a game that takes less than like 10 or 15 or 20 years to make, you really have to call your shots on where you want to innovate. And so we would like to innovate with blue shards. We would like to innovate with having lots of classes. We don't want to innovate on the Holy Trinity. We think it's good enough. Like, yes, you could probably make another system that's better, and games have tried, but we'll have the Holy Trinity. If you play a healer, maybe you're not as effective out soloing. Like, we'll give you a damage spell for sure, but maybe that's not the most effective way to solo. Maybe you want to solo on a different class, or you want to have a buddy that you run around with.
Sounds like that's the only thing you're not trying to innovate, by the way.
There are other things as well. Like, we're going to have dungeons and raids. We don't need to innovate on that. We're going to have crafting. It'll probably be a bigger part of our game than in some. We like Black Desert Online as great crafting. So yeah, it's scary to innovate everywhere, and I think that's where a lot of games fail. Is they get overly ambitious. They're like, every single feature we're going to innovate on, and it just takes a long time.
Right. When we are talking about excuse me, when we are talking about the classes 20 to 50, are we talking about actual unique classes, or are we talking about, I know you don't have a warrior, but let's just say warriors in the game. Yeah. Are you talking about like warrior and then arms warrior, fury warrior, and that counts as like two different classes? Are you talking about like the secondary classes when it comes to like the 20 to 50?
I hope they're more distinct than that. One idea we're playing with right now is that every class has a signature weapon, and they're the only class that has that weapon.
Oh, wow.
So if you find a harpoon, that's the weapon for a particular class, and no other class uses a harpoon. So right away, the arms warrior, fury warrior thing doesn't fit. You would have to say more that, oh, this is an axe warrior, and this is a like double wielding sword warrior. But even that, I think you'd want to push it further and say, this is a Viking berserker, and this is a swashbuckler. And now now they have kind of unique kits, unique feels, and different abilities. Like, we don't need to have ability overlap in that world. We can give everyone their own abilities, and they'll be, maybe every tank needs a taunt of some kind, and maybe every healer needs a area heal. But the arms warrior and the fury warrior have a lot of overlap in their abilities.
Gotcha. Alts. It sounded like you guys were not going to do the Final Fantasy XIV alt system, and it sounded more in line with, I guess, like World of Warcraft, where it's just a new character. A new character is its own class, a different alt. But at the same time, I remember one of your members mentioned that it would be possible to be like, hey, I'm in the middle of a raid, let me just swap to my alt real quick and respec because it might be better for this. How does that work when you have an alt system like pretty much most MMOs, where it's just a separate character? You mentioned that there's a lot of like, I guess, family bound items that you can share between your family of characters, your roster. Could you walk me through how the alt system is going to work a little bit more in detail?
Yeah, so we kind of start at the basics of what are the problems players don't like. What are they trying to fix? A big one with alts is it sucks to log all the way out of the game and log all the way back in. Like, you're missing chat. You don't know where your character was logged out. Maybe your add-ons don't work for both characters. It sucks to have to do content over and over again. Like, oh, well, I got to the reputation on this character. Now I need to do it on this other character. So our attitude is more, imagine almost everything is shared across characters. Like, maybe their inventory is shared. Like, if you find a shield for one character, you can give it to the other character. I mean, why not? Like, what are we scared of to try things like that?
Yeah. So it almost
the biggest fear is that maybe you don't play your other characters because they're already all progressed. But I think there's a sweet spot we can hit.
So it almost sounds like it is kind of like the Final Fantasy 14 character, only they're separate characters. Because everything in Final Fantasy
Right.
14,
And the reason I personally like the idea of separate characters is it lets you try out different, different looks for your character. Different, we haven't exactly settled on, race/species, but assuming we have something like that, like if you only have one character, what reason is there to roll up whatever ends up being an elf in our game? Or, you have one character that kind of presents male, but you want to play as a female looking character instead.
right?
Why not,
Outside of just the class mechanics, is the experience going to be significantly different between classes? Like, are they going to have like different starting zones and stuff like that? Because you did just mention that, shared progression to a certain degree too amongst your all, so you don't have to redo your stuff all over again. But then, like, if you're rolling on another character that may potentially start in a different area and goes and the storyline takes you through the lore of that class and race, you would have to kind of do that, right? So like, how would that work?
I think there's two problems with having, unique starting zones. One is right away it makes it hard to play with your friends. Like if you roll up one race and I roll up another, we can't start playing from the very beginning.
Okay.
The other one is you end up making a lot of content for every class. And if we're saying what's really important to us is to have lots of classes, then that's probably something you have to sacrifice, is really unique starting zones for them all. And we'll look at it, but I think that's right now we think that's a cost we're willing to pay. There are things you can do where maybe you get a different dialogue option if you're a certain class, or characters react to you differently. So hopefully it'll feel meaningful. We don't want it to feel so interchangeable that it's irrelevant. It's just that every time you make a lot of unique content, that throws up a barrier to adding more classes over time.
Right. That's interesting. So it doesn't really sound like a different class that is a different race is going to have like a different progression path, like in World of Warcraft, for example.
Yeah, that's our thinking right now, is because we really want you to jump in and play. Now, that's not to say that the starting experience will be identical every time you play, because that sounds kind of lame. Like maybe you choose one of 10 starting zones and you go there, or maybe you start in a blue zone right away so that it's already somewhat randomized and you don't know what to expect.
Right. Gotcha. I want to talk about combat here.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think Brian Holinka said that it was not going to be action combat and it was going to be more of a hybrid. So immediately in my mind, I'm thinking hybrid. Okay. Guild Wars 2 kind of seems pretty hybrid-y, even WildStar to a certain degree. Can you tell me a little bit more about the combat that you guys are expecting to implement into your game? Is it going to be very similar to Guild Wars 2? Because I personally think that amongst all hybrid tab targeting games, Guild Wars 2 really nailed it. I thought the combat was fantastic in that game.
Yeah, it's not a bad paradigm. I don't want to go too far down that road, or people will say, "Oh, it's just a clone of Guild Wars 2," which it's not. The reason we don't want to go full action often comes down to, if you think of a game like God of War or Dark Souls, if you dodge, you take 0 damage. Yep. And as soon as you make that decision, that means that gear matters a lot less than in an MMO, where if you don't have good enough armor, you're just not going to be able to fight this opponent.
Right.
It also means the game could be very, very twitchy, which is fun for some people, but not fun for others, and makes ping really, really matter and things like that. So again, at the end of the day, we want it to feel like an MMO, and we want a lot of that depth around, do I use a long cooldown now, or that sort of thing. Where we think there's an opportunity is just making the combat kind of look a little better. In World of Warcraft, you stand against a knoll or whatever, and you hit the knoll, and the knoll hits you, and you hit the knoll, and it looks really silly, and there's almost no motivation to move in the combat. Yeah. So we want to think a little bit more about, maybe dodging is not something you do constantly, but maybe you have a dodge button that puts you behind the enemy and then lets you hit them for extra damage from behind, and things like that. Maybe we build up more combo-like systems. Like Brian talks a lot about, Spider-Man has a pretty simple combo system where it's usually like, light hit, big hit, and then if you chain those together, you get something cool out of it. We think there's opportunities to do that while still keeping the long cooldowns and the kind of big bursts that are fun in MMOs.
Speed, pacing of combat is pretty important. A lot of people hate this GCD for Final Fantasy XIV's combat. Some people like
Yeah.
it, you know, and if you play it enough, you'll notice that there are skills that are off the GCD, obviously, and it makes it a little bit higher APM. But
Yeah.
Final Fantasy XIV, notoriously known for its GCD.
Yeah.
How fast are we expecting your combat to be?
So the reason games often have GCDs is to prevent flooding. There needs to be the arbiter of did this attack land or not. And if players are just sitting there mashing their keyboards, it's hard. You're creating enormous pressure on the server to be able to figure out what's going on. And so when you have the GCD, it means that you can only issue a command every 1.5 or 3 seconds or whatever the GCD
Right.
is. On the other hand, like, we don't want a game where hitting the button as fast as you can is the way to win. Like,
Right.
part of what is fun about role-playing game combat in general, including MMOs, is making smart decisions of, okay, the boss is going to hit me really hard. I need to pop a cooldown. Or my buddy, if I cast this buff on my buddy right now, that's going to have a big impact. So you do need enough space in the game to be able to react to those, to be able to notice they're happening,
Right.
maybe even to like communicate to your allies. Again, I think League of Legends does a pretty good job of this, where the combat could be fast-paced, but not so fast-paced that you can't communicate, that you can't say like, hey, we're going to go gank that dude now, or I'm going to blow a really big, I'm going to use my ult, and so, you should be able to follow up on it. I think things like that feel better than just the more damage you do is the faster you can hit the keyboard.
Right. What about the amount
So we want it
of...
to feel, I guess a way to answer it is, we want there to be enough time to talk to players and to evaluate the battle about what's going on without it constantly being, well, you can't do anything because everything's on cooldown.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha. I understand.
Fair.
What about the amount of abilities you have available to you? Guild Wars 2, you don't have that many. I think you have like what? 8. You have 8 different skills active on the weapon, with including the swap, and then like 4 passives and an ultimate and a heal. I think something like that.
Yeah.
What, like, are you with Ghost? Are you thinking, hey, we're gonna allow you to have like effing 40 abilities at your disposal, and it's gonna really, like, your decision on which one to use is going to matter, and you should really know your class, and that raises the skill ceiling, skill cap? Or is it gonna be a little bit more simpler, and it's gonna be like, hey, actively you're gonna have like 4 spells available, and you can combo these in any way you like, or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's probably not going to be as few as 4. Like, it'll be more than a MOBA, but it'll probably be fewer than like the 30 or 40 or whatever you have in a high-level World of Warcraft character. We do think the combos give you a great opportunity. A lot of MMOs don't do much with that,
Right.
but a lot of console games do, and you can get a lot of depth out of what Street Fighter gets a ton of depth out of like which button am I going to hit next, and can I execute this combo chain. So right now we're experimenting a lot more with, you have a light attack, you have a heavy attack, and then you have some other abilities. You might have an interrupt, you might have a big cooldown, things like that. And then it's how you use all of those together. Like, if you use light attack, heavy attack, maybe it makes your next attack an instant crit, or an automatic crit. So you decide, do you want to use a heavy attack, or do you want to use your big 12-second cooldown right then? And
Right.
we think there's an opportunity there to add a lot of depth.
Gotcha.
Again, League of Legends only has 4 abilities, but it's a lot more than that when you consider that, well, after you use this ability, it turns this
Yeah.
ability into something else. It keeps the number of buttons on your UI relatively small, but there's still a ton of depth to the combat. We have to have depth. That's just,
Right.
combat's not fun if there's not a lot of interesting decisions.
Is there going to be like a spammable skill like light attack and heavy attack where you could just constantly use that has no cooldown as a filler skill? Or is that kind of what you're thinking, or no?
Yeah.
Maybe.
We like the sound of that because it gets rid of the GCD thing and gives you something that you can always be doing.
Yeah.
But again, we'll have to experiment more to see how that feels. And is it too spammy? Do you feel like,
Right.
part of the problem with World of Warcraft is anytime you're not using your auto attack, you're kind of losing a lot of DPS, and that
Yeah.
makes it hard for you to want to run out of battle and do something. Or
Right.
imagine how cool it'd be if you could run over and just click on a fallen enemy and bring them back. Kind of, Baldur's Gate does this. A lot of games
Right.
do that. but it'd be really hard in a game like World of Warcraft because it's hurting your DPS so much to do that.
Right. Gotcha. One of the things that wasn't mentioned, unless I completely missed it, because I think like the broadcasts are always super late for me. Like even now it's like 5 in the morning.
Oh yeah.
But yes, one of the things that I don't think was mentioned was trading in marketplace. I would love to hear what you guys are going to do in regards to the marketplace and player to player trading.
I mean, I think it's really hard to have a social experience without player to player trading. Just point blank, like saying, "Hey, I have something. Do you want it? I'll trade it for you. Oh, you're an expert crafter. Can you make this thing for me?" Like, we really want to have a player based economy. What I'm skeptical about right now is having some kind of auction house, because I think auction houses actually get in the way of the social interaction. Like when you go to an auction house, you're just getting stuff. You don't really care who the other player was. It could be an NPC listing those items. So that's something we're gonna experiment with about. And certainly for the building aspect of the game, you have to just pretty much have very easy trading, because if someone chops a bunch of wood and they want to hand it to you to build a wall, like that can't be, that should probably be as simple as you throw the wood on the ground and they can pick it up.
Right. So the moment you introduce trading, which I also am a big fan of trading as well, MMO guy, but the moment you open that door, you're also opening the door to bots.
Yeah.
Is that something that you guys like? How are you going to remedy it? Because that almost feels like it's impossible to get rid of all your bots. It's like this just constant battle, the seesaw, where it's like you up your game against bots and then they figure out a way around it, and then you do that, and it's just you're back and forth. How do you combat that with open trading?
I mean, it's an arms race for sure, and I don't think there's any like, oh, we came up with a super clever solution and now we're not going to have that problem anymore.
Right.
I think it's a matter of making sure that you could be so worried about bots that you kind of make a bad experience for players. Like we could say, we're not going to have trading in our game because that prevents bots, but then you're taking out trading in the game.
Right.
So
that's what Black Desert
I don't
did.
know if there's a better solution than it's going to be an arms race. If we see that we made a design decision that makes botting very exploitive or is kind of ruining the game for people, then we'll think about what we can do about that. We think a lot of the trading will be with if you're on a blue shard, you're probably going to be with your friends or a known group or people you let in. So it shouldn't be as much. I need 10 iron, or I need a sword. I'm just going to go find a bot that will sell it to me for cheap.
Right. Excuse me. Sorry. Marketplace. No marketplace sounds very interesting though. Like,
yeah, I know that will sound scary to players because they imagine it in terms of, well, now if I want a potion, do I have to spam chat and then find someone and trade with them? And there are, I think it's BDO that does where you can like set up your character to sell things even when you're not online and things like that. Like
that was like
we really
the
want to promote.
That was like the old classic MMOs where like you would like AFK in town, put up like a shop, list your item, sell it, and then just go to sleep and then wake up the next day, see if your stuff sold.
Like I don't know if that's the right solution, but that's definitely more in the vein of what we're talking about, where it's a relationship you have with another player, even if it's a very transactional one, rather than, oh, I just go to the UI and I open up the UI and I get these potions, and there might as well not be another human on the other side of that.
Right.
I think players only think about it in terms of, oh, you're taking convenience away from me. And that's not really the goal. We just want to get back to it's a social game. That's the whole point.
Right. I mean, obviously you're not saying that 100% there's going to be no marketplace, but I can certainly see the direction that you're trying to go. You're trying to give the players an experience where you're interacting. You're trying to give the players a social experience rather than everything being, because like too much convenience does disconnect that, right? Like party finders and raid finders, which I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on that, party finders and raid finders?
Let me just say one more thing before I get to the dungeon finder, because it's related, is Diablo 3 had a big problem with its marketplace, and people said it was the real money auction house. That actually wasn't the problem. The problem was the best gear was something you just went and bought off this auction house. You didn't have to go kill demons to get it. You just went and bought all your gear, and that just totally took Diablo at its knees. The whole point of the game is to get loot.
Are you going to make the best in slot items that are like you have to defeat this dragon raid boss, are you going to make those bound? Or
probably those would have to be bound. And then the other thing we would like to do is just have a lot of really, really rare items so that when you get a sword, it's special and players are like, oh wow, you
Yeah.
have that sword. I've never seen anyone with that sword. I think the way MMOs have gotten is that everyone kind of has an expectation of I'm going to get the best in slot,
Right.
for everything. But
With the-
again, it's taking a little bit of convenience away, and it'll feel a little painful when you really, really want that sword and it won't drop for you. But I also think it helps when you do get it. It makes it really, really exciting rather than
Right.
something that like, well, of course I'm going to get it. Everyone expects to get it.
I love the idea of having a lot of end game different chase items. Are there
Yeah.
going to be different BIS items as well? Like, for example, there is no Sword of a Thousand Truths where this is it.
Sorry, I'm not
There's
talking a
going to
lot,
be a lot
guys.
of those.
Reacting a lot and just uploading some new badges and stuff for the channel. But I am hearing everything they're saying. It seems like they're doing things very different than most MMOs. He's pretty much just trying to give all the power to players and allowing the narrative to be controlled by them, the story, the marketplace, trading. Everything is just going to be controlled by the player. Even it sounds like the raids, the dungeons, it's all going to be playered. And you have a choice between, taking the red pill or the blue pill. and that would decide whether, what kind of environment and scenarios you're going to be playing in where, it's going to be more focused on PvE or PvP or whatever. Sounds like it's very nice, like very complicated, but it seems like if they know what they're doing, it can be done very nicely. Yeah. I believe this game is gonna be very good. Of course, I'm gonna test it out and see for myself if I really like it. Sorry, I just messed up. Oh. Alright, I just messed up on some of the badges. So now I have to go back. Fix them all.
Where it's like, yeah, this is BIS for this is BIS for this. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I hope so. And again, with the different number of classes and stuff like that, I hope it gives us a little more room to say, well, this may not be an item you want, but your alt may want it, or your pal may want it, or something like that. I mean, I worked at World of Warcraft for many years, and I know the challenge of saying, well, we're going to make 2 rings, and they're both going to be equally good. Like players kind of math out which is the real one they want, and the other one's kind of considered garbo unless it's
Right. Art style.
Oh yeah, so
yes.
the dungeon raid finder question, like
yes. I forgot my own question.
Yeah. I mean, I worked on those features a lot, so I take a lot of the blame for them. But I don't think where they ended up was awesome, because let's say in heroic dungeons in Burning Crusade, if you had trouble with a group, what you would do is you'd sit down with that group and kind of figure out, well, what do we need to do differently? Let's
Right.
make sure everyone understands the fights. Hey, I have a flask. Can I give you this flask? Maybe that'll help. The problem with Dungeon Finder is if someone wipes on a boss, you kick them or you leave, knowing that the game will immediately provide you with another group.
Right.
And so they're very weirdly anonymous. Like you don't talk to people, you barely
Yeah.
look at their names. It feels like you're running around with a lot of bots. And so the problem they were trying to solve was a very noble one, which is dungeons are super bad, super badass, and a lot of players don't get to see them because it's so painful to put a group together.
Mhm.
Maybe there are better ways to do it. Maybe it comes back down to browsing for a group, or maybe you do more things with friends, or maybe we matchmake for the easier content, but there's no matchmaking for like the, you know, the harder content because we
Right.
want you to try to figure it out.
Gotcha. Makes sense. What about the art style? The art style, you guys were talking, you didn't want it like too cartoony. Like someone asked, like, are you gonna have it more realistic or cartoony? And you definitely you said that you definitely want something that will, you know, last the test of time.
Yeah.
I would love to hear your inspiration behind the art style that you're going for, because I don't know, no one knows what it is, but we do see some concept art that you have shown. So maybe it kind of paints a little bit of a picture. For some reason, my mind just keeps going back to it's. I feel like it's going to look similar to League of Legends. I don't know why, but
yeah, I can tell you the extremes we want to avoid, which is we don't want it to be very cartoony in the way like Fortnite is, or
Right.
even World of Warcraft. But we also, it's hard in an MMO to go super photorealistic because that generally just means players get less content. And this is a game where you want lots and lots of content. Like you can't afford to say, well, we can't make another boss because we don't have an animator to do that because it's so hard to animate the models.
Right.
Or we can't add another dungeon set because in order to make a dungeon set, we have to have ruined stairway number 1 through 6, and we have to have like broken chandeliers and weapon racks for every possible art set. So I don't think it'll be super detailed in the sense of, I mean, what's a very, you know, game that looks like a photograph? You know, like Call of Duty or the EA Sports games. I don't think we're going for that. But within there, that still means you could have a kind of more mature, more juvenile look. I imagine we'll be on the more mature side just because the IP we're talking about, we really want to embrace a sense of mystery and like trying to understand what happened in the past and how that's going to affect the future. We care a lot about exploration, so we want people to kind of be poking around and opening the chest and looking behind the waterfalls to see what's there. So we need to have a lot of diversity, but we also want to have an IP that feels serious. I mean, Fortnite's not trying to be serious. Fortnite's like you can throw anything into it.
Are we going to have a lot of flexibility and leeway when it comes to character customization? Because one of the things that come with these Asian games is that, you know, it looks so real. You can literally put your own face in the game. You can make your character fat. You can make him skinny, tall, all that stuff. Very voluptuous. You know, but like in a lot of Western games, you don't have that flexibility, mainly because a lot of Western developers want to kind of stay with the lore. We don't want our tiger guy to look like this. Like we want him to look a certain way. We don't want a Tauren to look like, you know, something other than a Tauren. Are we going to have some flexibility there, or is it going to be kind of limited?
I think customization is super important. Like a big part of MMOs, again, it's a social game, and so having the ability to express yourself, having another player, whether it's a friend or a stranger, react to the way you look, like, holy cow, I love that outfit you have, or I love how ridiculous your character looks. Like, that's cool. And I'd hate to lose that in the name of like adhering to the IP. Like, players are going to be silly. Let's just let them be silly. If it really offends you as a player, well, you have blue shards you can go to, and you won't have to deal with randos.
Right. Gotcha. So I'm assuming,
I don't know if we can deliver, you know, if we have more than just a human race, I don't know that we can deliver on the crazy level of customization in some of the Asian MMOs where you can recreate a K-pop star, recreate your own face. Like, but I think we can do a lot better in terms of deciding how you look and giving you a lot of options around hair and skin color and height and weight and things like that.
So I'm assuming based off of that gender locking is also something that you're not a big fan of?
No, I think the kind of the modern way to handle gender is to let players choose the pronouns they get addressed as, and then just, you know, a lot of games will have like body A, body B, or maybe you can even pick something in between, and that's kind of how you determine what you look like.
Gotcha. So if I want to be a female warrior or a male warrior, I'll be able to do that to a certain degree.
Yeah. If you want to be a ambiguously gendered warrior, that's fine too. We'll need to know when the NPC talks to you, what do they say?
Right. Got it. I know we're over time here, so I'm going to just go over this last section, if you don't
Cool.
mind.
I don't
And
mind.
that is with monetization. I just have a couple of questions in regards to monetization. I remember you did mention that you'll probably have like a box price or something like that, or I think you said either do a box price or a sub. I think that's what you said, right? During
Yeah.
the broadcast, either or, right? First question is I'd love to hear your thoughts on monetizing Head Start because every company does it now. And it's like, hey, if you pay $100, you get to start 3 days Head Start. Love to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts on that.
I don't want to promise that we won't do it because maybe it's just a very common thing. As a player, it does rub me a little bit of the wrong way because
Okay.
usually I want to get in, I want to play with my friends, or I want to get to the end game, and it feels like what you're really saying is, look, the game costs $100. Like, let's just be honest
Yeah.
about it for most players.
Right.
Now, that said, one of the things we would really love to do is not have an early access, because usually what early access means is, please give us some money, and in return, we'll let you play the game earlier. Like, we would love to just let players play the game earlier. Like,
Right.
right now we don't need the money. So rather than selling early access, we'd rather just get as many players as possible playing the game, because then they'll help us figure out what works and what doesn't.
Right. Right. So early access, you mean by that, you mean like early access launch, not like early access testing.
Yeah. Like, it's a old school beta where anyone can just go play the game rather than go to Steam, and if you buy the game now, we'll let you in early.
Gotcha.
I think we'll avoid that.
Gotcha.
I mean, overall, we don't know what our monetization, excuse me, will be at. It's something we have to do a lot of research on and kind of,
Sure.
see what works. We want to make a AAA game that comes with a AAA budget. That means we need to make sure that we can, pay our bills and pay all these people who want to work on the game. We don't think free to play with microtransactions is the right approach. We just don't think that will give the player experience we want and the audience we want. And so if you take that off the table, what's left are things like, just buy the box and play the game like Diablo, or a submodel. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would say submodels are kind of out, but people pay for Netflix subscriptions,
Netflix.
and Amazon subscriptions and things like that. So, again, that would be a great thing to get player feedback on. Overall, one of the things I really liked about Riot was their philosophy of, we want players to feel good about spending money because they want to, not because they feel like they have to. Like, we want players to say, I love your game, I'm willing to give you money to get like something else in the game.
Right.
That's the right approach.
Okay, so permanent convenience items have been widely accepted in Path of Exile. No one looks at Path of Exile as a pay-to-win game. However, you absolutely need, if you're going to play that game long term, you absolutely need to shell out a few bucks for like the storage stuff, which isn't too bad because it is permanent, but you still kind of have to pay for that. Is that something that you think is acceptable when it comes to monetizing, like inventory slots, but it's permanent, you just buy it once and you have it forever? Or are you trying to stay away from that?
As a player, that doesn't bother me, because usually the way it works out is, I play the game for a while. If I decide, hey, I love this game, I'm going to play this game a lot, it's worth it for me to have more inventory just because I'm going to play the game for years. I think that feels a little better. In general, I'm playing through the DLC for Cyberpunk right now. It's awesome, and I don't mind paying for it because it's really good. But I wouldn't have bought that at the very beginning because I didn't know if I was going to play the game very long. So I kind of like that, try before you buy approach, where players can kind of see, oh yeah, this is going to be a game I'm going to invest lots and lots of hours in, or I'm trying this out, maybe it's not for me.
Gotcha. Battle Pass. Thoughts on Battle Passes?
I think battle passes are a decent way to, one, they give players something to do, right? If it's the kind of thing where like, hey, complete all these quests or whatever, and we'll give you this item, and players like to fill in boxes. So I think that can be a fun thing to do. It's a decent way to say, I I don't mind paying a little bit more for a little bit more speed or whatever it is. I would just want to make sure it really did feel optional.
Sure.
I play a lot of Marvel Snap. I have not, sorry guys, I have not spent a lot of money on that game because I never felt like I needed to.
Sure. Gotcha. I do have one last question. I feel terrible because we've kind of gone over our time here. So
Let's do one more question.
Okay, cool. Let me just ask you this one last question. And this is a pretty simple, straightforward question. How long do you think it takes to realistically finish a brand new MMORPG?
You mean as a player or as a developer?
As a developer, like to create and finish a game. Now, obviously, budget and size and team and all that stuff is factored in. But like, if we're just going to generalize everything, how long do you think?
If I was playing Jeopardy or something, and I answer a question here, I would say 5 to 10 years, depending on scope, depending on how much support you get. And one of the things I love about the studio we have now is we're able to move really fast, and we can do that because we don't have to spend all of this time trying to get approval with everything. That's what often causes games to take a long time. Is the big boss or the powers that be want reassurance that the game is going to be a hit. So you spend a lot of time kind of showing them the game and making demos and making PowerPoint decks and talking about the game. Whereas right now we're just building the game, which is it's surprising to all of us how quickly that's going. Now, that's not to say we're going to finish the game in 2 years, but none of us want to be working on the game for 10 years either.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
If we could finish the game in 4, 5, 6 years, I would be thrilled. We're not going to know until we get into it. Maybe blue shards are a terrible idea and we have to try something totally different. That's kind of the challenge of game development. So you're not trying to hit a date, so you got to make sure the game is good.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Perfect. That's pretty much it for me. My questions. Chat, awesome. I know. I did try to ask Greg a few of your questions as they were coming in chat. Like I was kind of reading. At the same time, I don't think we're gonna actually have time for. I wanted to do like a quick Q&A at the end, but I don't think we're gonna have time. We've already run over time, and I want to be courteous to my guest here, Greg. I really appreciate you for joining me. Thank you so much to you and your team for making the time to do this. And I want to apologize to you guys. Sorry, I tried to finish as fast as I could to get to a Q&A, but we just couldn't. Sorry. But Greg,
we could do a Q&A again in the future. Let's,
love it.
Let some time go by, let people learn more about the game. And as they have questions, I'm happy to meet with you again and do it.
I love that. That's amazing. I mean, no shots fired to Riot. I think, that team was great, but, this is a lot easier for me too, to be able to just communicate with you openly like this. This is fantastic. Is there anything that you want to say before we close this out?
I want to thank everyone that is excited and paying attention. I've been getting so many messages, just people saying either they love the game idea or they love our approach about talking about it, or both. I understand it's not going to be a game everyone wants to play. I understand not everyone wants our approach. I've talked to people who are like, dude, let me know when the game's done, and that's fine. That is fine. But again, thanks for the attention, love we've gotten already.
Oh, it's been great. I mean, you have an all-star team. I have a lot of respect for you, Greg. Once again, thank you so much. Excuse me. I want to apologize to YouTube as well as Twitch for coughing so much. Greg, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Big shout outs to also Mr. Respecs, who was the person behind the scenes that I was talking to. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. As far as the YouTube video goes, as well as the Twitch broadcast, we're going to close it out here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Don't forget to like it.
I think the video was pretty nice. Kind of gave you a good feel of who the dev is and who you're going to be, what game you're going to be basically playing, or what company or whatever that's going to make your game, I feel like that's pretty important to know who's making your game and what they're doing, what their plans, and hopefully they're excited for the game and they're willing to make it the best that it could be, and hopefully it can. Yeah, that was a pretty good video. I'm trying to get more emotes.
So, after witnessing Ashes of Creation's development over the last 3 years, seeing Baldur's Gate 3 end up in a Game of the Year state, and then watching NCSoft try to scramble around last minute to fix a game that nobody asked for, it's made me realize open development is a very viable and preferable way forward for gaming, at least in my opinion. And today, I'm going to talk about this in relation to Ashes of Creation and PAX Day. But before we get into that, our beautiful patrons and coped out the wazoo Twitch subs and I would love for you to grab yourself a Coca-Cola, because open development obviously isn't for everyone. And when it comes to a project as huge as an MMO, open development can come across as a double-edged sword. However, the negatives far outweigh the positives in my opinion, and today I'm going to attempt to convince you that I am not completely brain dead. Now, with all that bollocks out of the way, let's begin, shall we? So, it's no secret that corporate-led games over the last 15 years or so have slowly drained the soul out of gaming. Companies are no longer willing to take risks, the games that come out are very safe and uninspired, with the exception of a few of course, and monetization has become a huge push over an actual well-made game. Pre-orders, microtransactions, optional subscriptions, and cosmetics to label them all in their entirety. However, since about 10 years ago or so, a new era began to slowly grow within the gaming space: early access games. These were indie developers oozing with passion but lacked the funding to get their game off the ground, and although the idea of charging for an unfinished game back in the early days was frowned upon, it seems that has become the norm for AAA companies nowadays, as huge, multi-billion-dollar franchises release with so many bugs that you'd think they were inspired by Chronicles of Elaria. But this becoming the norm for AAA has allowed the gaming community as a whole to accept the early access way of development, as this method has delivered us some of the most amazing games in history: Terraria, Don't Starve, Subnautica, and the latest game added to the legendary indies, Valheim. Interestingly, you'll notice that all of these games are from the survival genre, but there is a history of non-survival games succeeding as well. Surely, right? Which brings us to the present. Unfortunately, as early access became accepted by the masses, many projects appeared on the scenes that didn't have good intentions. Kickstarter was the home for most of these, and we are still yet to have a successful Kickstarter project actually release. Actually, after a little research, it turns out Pathfinder Kingmaker was kickstarted and released in 2018, and I'm sure you'll let me know of some others in the comments. Oh, hey, speaking of Kickstarters that have yet to release, let's talk about Ashes of Creation. Nobody is denying that the last 2 years of their open development have been fantastic. We've pretty much seen all of the systems in the game now working well, signifying the approach of that highly anticipated Alpha 2. We've also had some fantastic teasers without spoiling anything significant, and the insight to how much work goes into an MMORPG has really taught me to respect what was released in the past. But as of this week, a new game has arrived on the scene that has taken the MMO community by storm, with a different style of development that isn't quite as involved as Ashes of Creation, which means now we can talk about something that actually exists. PAX Day's first alpha test began a few days ago, and I'll admit I am completely addicted to it for a few important reasons. The general vibe of the test is very polished, the test itself is fairly fleshed out with a plethora of gathering, crafting, and building content, and the playable world space is extremely huge. For context, it takes about 2 hours to actually run from one side of the playable space to the other, and by God, the Unreal Engine 5 graphics definitely make that an enjoyable experience. Now, although PAX Day is taking a very similar open development route to Ashes of Creation, that would be showing us early iterations of their alpha gameplay, fixing bugs as we report them, and just listening to the players' feedback in general, they're doing it in a much different way to Intrepid. PAX Day first announced itself back in March this year, and pretty much went dark to the general public up until 3 days ago. They did indeed release a couple of vlog-type videos that gave us some nice insight into their studio, a small glimpse at the direction the game is heading, but absolutely nothing like Ashes of Creation's monthly deep dives, and that's okay. Mainframe have kept most of their information strictly to their inner Discord community and getting feedback from their friends and family alpha testers. And that's resulted in the product that we see today. So this much less public method is also a very viable option for success. Now, let me get one thing straight here. I am by no means trying to pit these two games together. I am a huge MMORPG fan and also a survival game enjoyer, and I don't even think PAX Day is trying to appeal to the same audience as Ashes of Creation anyway. You see, people in my personal community have expressed that they're not really a fan of PAX Day's survival-esque gameplay focus, and I'm sure there are people within the PAX Day community who are not a fan of the MMORPG leveling gameplay. Believe it or not, it's okay to like different types of games. I'm sure that's a foreign concept to most of you. The thing that really keeps my hopes up for both PAX Day and Ashes of Creation is that both of these developers are in such a unique position, being open and transparent about the state of their game and the direction that they want to go with it, whilst allowing the community to express feedback and then actively make changes. Ashes of Creation displayed this in abundance during Alpha 1 and over the last 2 years, but now it's time for Mainframe to show up.
Give me 1 second, be right back. Alright, I'm back.
Us that they're listening. And, much like with Ashes of Creation's Alpha 1, the Mainframe devs have released 2 major patches already that's fixed some glaring bugs. And don't even get me started on the upcoming combat overhaul. I cannot wait to see the future of this game. Now, to conclude, I just want to talk about the timescale because I think it's important to look at the future of these 2 games and reflect upon both of their development times. PAX Day started development in 2019, likely spending the majority of that time concepting their ideas, recruiting devs for their team, and planning out the in-depth crafting mechanics that we see in-game today. However, as PAX Day announced after Unreal Engine 5 released, I suspect the majority of this game's development cycle has been made within Unreal Engine 5. The use of Nanite and Lumen in this game has really, truly blown me away, and you can tell that the game has been built from the ground up to utilize that. However, Ashes of Creation is in a bit of a rough spot. Due to the sheer scope of the game, it's already been nearly 7 years, and we still don't even have an announcement date for their second public alpha test. They teased that they will announce which quarter it will be in during this month's stream, but that still doesn't change the fact that we don't have an actual date. But personally, I think the time that it's taken Ashes of Creation so far is absolutely well on pace with what we expect from a full-scope MMORPG. It takes just a moment to analyze the difference in scope for these 2 projects. Ashes is featuring a 64 class system, a fully customizable weapon system, an innovative node system with player-driven mechanics, a huge 1.2 thousand kilometer squared world with oceans and boats and caravan, and the game's scope is absolutely massive. PAX Day almost pales in comparison. But that, my friends, is exactly my point. These two games, they're not trying to compete with each other. They exist within entirely different genres and only share one particular aspect, the massively multiplayer part. So, I hope everyone shares my sentiment when I say I'm genuinely looking forward to the future of both of these games. I think I will pick up PAX Day on this channel, keep you all updated like I do with Ashes of Creation, and play their tests whenever they drop because I want both of these games to succeed.
Yeah, I'm gonna try them out. I don't know if it's a game for me, but I definitely want to try it out and see, see what's going on. My phone died. Makes sense. And okay. Sure.
Have a
Yeah.
plethora of ideas and feedback for Mainframe.
I do really want to play. There's some new UI, I guess, 2 days ago.
This is new skill UI. You can spell it now. Let's go. Mr. J, please make it right. Shy is the best.
Right.
После этого слева попробуем его. Херак, юскрон. Ёб твою мать.
Make it a PvP game. You guys might not have PvP, but I do. Don't you? What the Oh my god. Oh hell nah. Oh no no no.
Oh damn.
Nah.
Joe is full on our base. That's fine. They're not going to kill our base. They can't Peggy over. Now hit the FT here. You can go on to it in a second.
They're not going to kill our base.
Jump to the FTs and the Ricos on the east side. Sorry, west side and south, north side. West north. Right here. This FT
West
can't
north.
shoot you. Right here.
Is that a new direction, dude? Did a
You
new
need to die soon.
direction
There's
just
Char on
get
our fucking base,
discovered?
you know,
West
fuck,
north?
Get in here.
It's crazy.
We are full back now. Tell allies we're keeping show by them being at our base because we're low. That's actually probably the best thing we could do for him. I'm still in this base. Burn this fucking shit out, man.
We have minute timers die.
You're burning.
You need to die. You need to die. We're
Oh,
dead.
Invicta.
I actually think.
We just got
Panic
one
is
shot show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my guild's played against. They guild a lot.
Remember what I said
on,
about famous last words?
They know they don't
Worse.
have the damage without the Musa, and if I can eat that Musa's I can eat it so good.
What the heck? There.
Go, Aki, go. He's not paying attention. Go trade me out. Aki, trade me out. Trade me out. Beat him up, Aki. He did not. He did not. He says, oh crap. Oh goodness. Oh dear, that was hilarious.
Primero, va. Vámonos. Voy a soñar con un corsario travestido que me lleva al altar. La bandera de colores en la proa voy a izar para con el martillo. Que nunca voy a renunciar.
These are just highlights. There was actually like a video of the skill. I might watch some more stuff when I get a chance.